Thank you. So there's been no actual request from Blackpool or Wire for us to take up their need then, or fulfil their need?
No, there's been no specific request, no.
Okay, and my last question for the moment really is, I think the need is fundamental here. As far as I can see, if we can't identify the need for us to provide these sites, then there would be no question for me about refusing this. I would definitely want to refuse this application. What's the officer's view on that? That if we weren't able to demonstrate that we have to fulfil that need, would the officer recommendation still be for approval if we couldn't show that there was a need?
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, we specifically raised this issue with the barrister. We have reviewed the situation in Blackpool and Wire, as well as filed, and also taken into consideration of issues relating to provision in Preston, because obviously this site is relatively close to our borough boundary with Preston. Having taken into account all those issues and discussed that with our barrister, his firm advice is that there would be no case to run at an appeal if permission was to be refused on the grounds of need. So the advice that we're getting is, and again this is based upon some very clear findings in the Fairfield Road appeal decision, that need is a reason for refusal that we should avoid pursuing.
Sorry, Chair, that doesn't quite answer the question. My question, just to put it a little more clearly, if it was the officer's opinion that there was no need, then would that change their decision or recommendation? Sorry.
The lack of need would change the balance of the issues. I've got to say that I've assessed this application having regard to the need, and therefore I've not carried out that exercise. So the balance would move against the grant of planning permission. Whether it would move sufficiently to change that recommendation is because we'd have to take all those issues into account. But there will be one less thing in its favour.
Okay, thank you. That's it for me.
I'll just say, Councillor Duffy, that obviously need is paramount to this. I've got in my hand here the August 2011 document, the inspector's report. I've highlighted the statement that Mr. Evans has read out. If you want to have a read of it, it's here.
Yeah, could you read it out perhaps?
You want me to read it out?
Yeah, please.
Yes. It has been read out once by needs to the district. Wider area, the need in the wider area is a significant material consideration weighing in the appellant's favour. Do you want me to pass it to you? No?
Just for clarification, that was obviously a quote from the Secretary of State's decision letter in regard to the appeal at Fairfield Road, which was both a planning application and an enforcement notice. In that position, the decision was actually to refuse planning permission and uphold the notice because there were other issues other than need, but it was something that was weighed in the favour of the appellant on that case.
Councillor Chu.
Thank you, Chairman. I've just got a couple of things that I want to mention. As you know, history and heritage is my thing, and I'm very disappointed that our officers didn't ask the applicant for a historic environment statement. I think that would have been helpful because rural fire particularly doesn't have a lot of very old buildings, and the buildings we've got should be treasured, and the buildings within their settings should be treasured. And yes, there are a number of metres between the listed building and this site, but the boundary runs together, and I would imagine that this land did belong probably to this farm in the first place. So that's, I really am disappointed in that, and the fact that it wasn't advertised as a you know, a listed building. Well, I'm saying infringement, it's not an infringement, but that a listed building was having an application close to it. So that is disappointing, and if this committee is minded to approve this application, that could be an opportunity lost to save what is a very important building in rural Fylde. The second thing is equality. I'm a passionate believer in equality, but I find positive discrimination as insulting and offensive to the group of people as it is to discriminate against. And I just get the feeling with this that it is being offered a positive discrimination argument to accept what, to me, is unacceptable, particularly as had these have been 4 houses that were being planned for that site, you would look at it and you'd see there is no garden. So where are these children going to play that I don't doubt will be there? Where, probably on the road when you look at the site, which is hardly ideal. And having had experience, and I know that we've to judge every application on its merits, I don't need reminding about that, but in Fylde, while I've been on this committee, we've had 2 applications, one at Westby, which to my knowledge has been well run, has been acceptable in every sense, there has been no complaints, there has been nothing adverse to say that the Gypsy Traveller site that's there is nothing but perfectly acceptable. But I also have, seen as my ward neighbours it, the horrendous experience of having travellers who do not behave in an acceptable way and do not, are not good neighbours. So I think that this should be looked at very carefully, because one of the things that happened down at Hardhorn was that the caravans, the site started off by maybe being just, you know, just a few caravans, but in no time at all there ended up being about 40 people there. Well, I'm not suggesting that there's going to be 40 people on this site, but when you look at condition 3 on page 33, it says that there will be 4 pitches, 2 caravans per pitch. Well, I'd like to bet £1 to a penny that before we've turned round there will actually be not 4 families there, but 8 families there, because I don't doubt for one moment that there will be, they could be extended families, they could be different families, I don't know. But I think that that is highly likely. And condition 3 does not say that they've to be named, that they've to be members, that only one caravan, the large caravan, the 23-foot one, has got to be occupied, but the tourer has to be left empty. There is nothing to guide the applicants to say that that's what we expect from them. And with my experience of what happened at Hardhorn, if you leave an absolute tiny, tiny, tiny inch of space, a yard's taken in no time at all. So I would like to suggest that maybe, if this committee is minded to approve, is that this condition 3 is looked at more carefully. And again, I don't want to be discriminatory against anybody, but by the same token, I want this to be tied up that advantage cannot be taken. And I think the final thing is, I saw myself this morning that there was asbestos, broken sheet asbestos was all over that site. And I'm sure that the condition that says that that site's to be cleared, I think that wants beefing up, and it's to be cleared to possibly a suggested depth before that becomes acceptable to being a habitable space. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Chu. Just to explain to people in the hall, there are, in fact, 2 gypsy sites that we've been involved with over the last few years now. The Bambers Lane site, which we approved, despite the fact there was an awful lot of opposition, we approved for 6 sites. We doubled the number last year, 6 sites, but with 4 caravans for each site. They actually expanded the site. And the other site, which is the Hardhorn site, we refused, and it's still ongoing, and that was the section I read out to you. It's still ongoing for the removal of the travellers from that particular site. And I think Mr. Evans is going to explain 1 or 2 things.
Yes, the general generic guidance in regard to gypsy and traveller sites is that generally a pitch will have 2 caravans on it. So hence the reference to 8 caravans and 4 pitches. That's the differentiation. Traditionally, one of those caravans might be remain on site, and the other one would be one that would be taken touring in the search for work. That's not always the case, though. Sometimes that second caravan is occupied as a second bedroom, for example, by children, etc. But that is within the remit of that control that's proposed to be exercised there. I suppose it's like any dwelling, for example. Whilst you might approve a 3-bedroom house, you wouldn't necessarily control the number of people who lived in it. So that's the background for the pitches. We have experience of large sites elsewhere which have caused problems. We've had experience of small sites which haven't caused problems. This application is a smaller site than the small site that we have experience of, with the four families as opposed to 6. The guidance that we had from the Planning Advisory Service when they came to talk to us as a group last year, they were saying that in their opinion, gypsy caravan sites with 5 or 6 families or pitches on them worked better than the guidance, which still suggests that 15 caravans is an optimum number. So based upon that, on that guidance, and we consider that any impact from a development of this scale would be minimal. We're not saying that there would be no impact whatsoever, but any development has an impact. What we're saying is that those impacts will be at an acceptable level.
Two other issues, the historic buildings one and the comparing.
Yeah. Sorry, yeah. The other issue that Councillor Chu raised earlier on was about the setting of the listed building. That is something that we have assessed. We have taken account of the guidance note produced by English Heritage in regard to assessing the setting of listed buildings, and we've concluded that this proposal will not have or not adversely affect the setting of the listed building, and therefore we don't feel that it needs to be advertised or consulted, English Heritage consulted with. That opinion, again, as I said earlier, the report, including that aspect, has been reviewed by a barrister, and he concurs that our understanding of that section of the legislation is correct.
Councillor Mulholland.
Thank you, Chairman. Obviously, the need is crucial to this application, and I'm very disappointed in what I'm hearing. That the officer who presented did mention that there will be more weight given to the need in Fylde borough as opposed to geographical Fylde, suggesting that the weight given to the need of the wider area of Blackpool, Poulton, Blackpool, Wyre and Fylde would be less than if the need were actually in Fylde borough. Now, you know, I think this is something that we need to look at, because it's a bit like the old housing figures, you know, supplying land for Blackpool's housing figures. I hate to think that the Fyldes are going to be used to make gypsy sites for the wider need. We are Fylde Borough Council, we are a planning authority, and we should be looking at the needs of Fylde Borough. I understand being aware of the wider need, but I don't think our policy should be based on that. So that really does concern me somewhat. And if there isn't a need in Fylde, then I think that should carry greater weight than the need in the wider area. And as I understand where the debate's going on, there is certainly no need in Fylde. And I hear Mr Evans relating to appeals and barristers, etc. Well, you know, they ain't always right. And I'm sorry, Mr Evans, but you're trying to second-guess appeals. You don't always get it right. The Secretary of State certainly doesn't always get it right. So I have got concerns about that, because all of a sudden, Blackpool, you know, in a lot of areas, the needs of Blackpool can be vast and not too wholesome. And I don't want File to be picking up some of those needs, whether it's gypsy sites or other needs. If I can then go on to the condition 10, and I hear what Mr Evans is saying, I understand what he's saying, but am I right in thinking that still when we have outline planning for housing and things, that we ask for an indicative plan to show things like access and egress and just how things will fit? Am I right in thinking that?
Yes, Chairman, through you.
No, because it seems that is a common sense approach. So, you know, we don't want detail. It's a housing application, so many houses, but we do say to them, well, go away and just give an indication of how it's going to fit, how you're going to access and egress, how that number of houses are going to fit. What it seems we're saying here is, because of course the new residence expert has said they believe that this can't be achieved, this condition number 10. Your barrister's telling you it doesn't matter, we're not bothered. If they can't achieve it, they can't achieve it. They'll have to go away and do something else. I find that unsatisfactory, quite honestly, because I would rather our officers did a broad, took a broad view on it in the first instance, or got advice in the first instance to see whether it was likely to be achievable. Because once permission has been given, you know, this thing about conditions and enforcement, I could walk you from this site, if you brought your wellies, I could walk you from this site. It'll only take me 10 or 15 minutes towards Preston Road on Freckleton March there. And I can show you, and I've mentioned this in how many planning meetings, you'll all be sick of me. I can take you to a farm there, it's a named farm. And 10 years ago, it was a Dutch barn and a mobile home. And the day the guy moved on, I told the enforcement officer. And I must have phoned up almost monthly over the last 10 years. And he's now there, living there. He's now there with full permission. So please, when you talk about enforcement, I'm sorry. It might work for some people. It hasn't worked for me. And I like to think that I've got more of a voice than some of the people in here. I'm a district councillor, for goodness sake. So I would have preferred, and I'm, you know, irrespective of what the barrister says, I would have preferred to know whether that is remotely possible, because if it's not, I actually wouldn't want to be approving it, because I think it would be problematical for us at a later date, whatever the barrister says. And thirdly, I might as well finish, thirdly, the highways. What's his name? Cliff, is it, or something? Or Craig, or somebody? I wouldn't like to see this approved because of this, and this, and then we get one back saying, oh no, you can't approve this, and, you know, Cliff's on holiday or something. A few years ago, we were pulled over the coals to Peel because we hadn't checked on professional advice that had been given, and an appeal inspector said it was our duty to double check on professional advice, not just to get professional advice, but then to question that professional advice. We're getting professional advice here, supposedly professional. It's very unprofessional. We're getting on one hand no, yes, no, and then we're getting, well, of course, but we wouldn't want to defend you. You know, what an absolute shambles. It's appalling. We've got the Newton Residents Association. We've got the Newton Residents Association supplying us with very professional documents. And I do understand, I don't mean this disrespectfully, but I do understand that, you know, whoever pays the piper calls the tune, and you can get experts to say more or less what you want to say. But having read their paperwork and their arguments, they are actually very good. And there's not a chance on earth that I could vote for approval for this today. I would be asking, can you please go out and can we approach an independent highway, another authority, or somebody else to get a definitive view on this, because we're getting such bad advice. So on highways grounds alone, I couldn't go along with this. I'm sorry. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Chairman, thank you. 3 points raised. First of all, expecting an indicative layout. There's one on the screen there that shows how the site will be developed. On page 30 of the report, it says that the means of drainage appears to be acceptable in principle, and then the details will be dealt with by condition. That is something that's been looked at by the Environment Agency. I think, as I said to a previous answer, if the Environment Agency or United Utilities or any of those consultees felt that the scheme was so inappropriate that it couldn't be dealt with by condition, they would have recommended refusal of the application. In regards to highways, the test is laid down in the National Planning Policy Framework. At paragraph 32, the final bullet point says development should only be prevented or refused on transport grounds where the residual cumulative impacts of development are severe. What we've got here is a highway authority that's saying that there's some bits and pieces that aren't ideal with this, but in no way are they saying that this is severe. So the recommendation is one that any impacts can be dealt with through the imposition of sufficient conditions. You might disagree with the resultant conclusions of the Highway Authority, but that's not necessarily to say that they are unprofessional.
Councillor Ahmed.
Sorry, Chairman. I thought we did have an email of, is it Cliff, saying I wouldn't like you to...
I think it's Glenn Robinson.
Sorry?
Glenn Robinson.
Glenn. I'm not right in thinking that we had an email of Glenn saying, wouldn't want you to approve this under any circumstances. And then,
I think we've got a copy somewhere.
Well,
Yeah.
I don't think that's particularly professional. Thank you, Chairman.
Right. Yes? Councillor Ahmed.
I'd like to start again by praising the speakers. It is great to have people turn up here with such knowledge, so succinct, so precise, and finish on time as well, which is very unusual for half of our speakers. I think you did a great job in getting the message across to us. I'd like to disagree slightly with Councillor Chu about sometimes you can have good travellers, sometimes you can have bad travellers. You can sometimes have good residents in houses who are millionaires and bad ones. We've got a jolly old man in St Anne's who goes around buying up houses, trashing his neighbours, closing down shops and ruining streets. He's really a millionaire. It doesn't matter who you are. I'm a little uncomfortable overall why we're here this afternoon. I just wonder if we deleted gypsies from this whole documentation and we were building 4 nice bungalows here, if we'd even bothered turning up this afternoon. And this has very little to do with planning and to do with something completely different. And I think the statement on page 20, I hope most of us would find it quite horrible, I do, probably lowering educational standards in schools attended by gypsy children. I think that's just an offensive statement, and I think it probably shows maybe why we're here a little bit, which has little to do with planning. I think that today we went on a visit and we saw that many people talk about the worries of cars parking on the roads and causing us issues, and Grange Road certainly does have that problem at the moment. Today we saw that Grange Road is a very difficult road to drive down, and Grange Road obviously has issues on it. Thames Road, we saw massive tractors come down it, we saw tractors coming down again pulling things behind them, we saw white vans zooming along it, and we saw very large vehicles pulling things easily come along Thames Street, demonstrating that it can be used. There is an asbestos building at the end of the road which looks a bit derelict, which I don't know if bits can fall off that accidentally and land on this site, or if the bits on this site are original bits, I don't know. There's a mini JCB parked next door but one on the Thames Street as well, so there is vehicles down there already, quite substantial vehicles. I'm afraid a lot of this we've been through over and over again through the year, and all of us around the table actually know the truth, and we can speak for the audience, or we can speak as we know where this is. The statutory organisations have all said this is okay. The statutory organisations, each one that's gone through by our officers, have told us that this is all right. If we reject it to satisfy the people here, and that's the only reason we'd be doing it, we will lose on appeal, almost certainly, because the statutory people, one by one, have said this is okay. The conditions that have been put in by the officers will stop any development if they're not achieved. If the drainage of the sewer system is not achieved, they will not move on. It states it clearly here. That's not just beyond it, that's before enforcement. Nobody will move on before that's in place. And as such, as all the statutories are ticking the boxes and as the conditions are in place, I would move that we accept the officers' recommendations.
Please, let's be sensible now. Come on. We're going to get things like this, so please listen to what's being said, and at the end, then it's now Councillor Old's turn.
Thank you, Chairman. I sometimes think that Councillor Armitt goes out of his way to be perverse at these meetings. He always seems to put the...
Can we stick to the facts in front of us and not be personal, please?
I will get to that now. He made the point, and I do have to come back on this, Chairman. He made the point that if we deleted gypsies and replaced it with 4 houses, well, I'll put and turn that on its head and say if it were for 4 houses, it would be for refusal today, most likely. So I think that's another thing that we should think about. I look at the highways comments and I'm somewhat bemused by them. When I saw the email that was sent, I think it was yesterday, I just couldn't believe it. I spoke to the officer who wrote this report last week, and he told me he'd reread the Sanderson report and had been out on site and was really quite disturbed about the road conditions and was going to do a subsequent report. I believe he submitted that on Friday. It may have been received by us on Monday. I am told, and I don't know if this is true, that our officers then contacted the County Council department, Highways Department, and Rachel Crompton, as a result of the conversation, sent the email which is attached to your late observations. I have to tell you that I am concerned about that, and I did go to see the Chief Executive of the County Council yesterday and the Director of Highways about it, because it's the second time it's happened in recent months. And I have no argument with what officers state, but it's the lateness of these observations. When you have a look at this application, it's been in place for 91 weeks, and that officer has had lots of time to look at the reports and go out on site. And when he does his report, I believe that we should give more weight to that than to an email from his the higher up officer saying that it couldn't be defended at appeal. I really do feel that it's not right that we should be getting these late reports, and I have made that point to the Chief Exec at the County Council. I don't in any way dispute what has been said. I can't, because I'm not a professional, but I am unhappy that these late reports come in, and the way that an officer who has been dealing with the application for an awful long time has his comments overturned. So I've dealt with that part. Anybody who goes out there can see that that highway is not in a good state. I have concerns as well, because from what I can see, there seems to be no flood risk assessment, no ecology survey, no phase 2 land contamination survey, and there are question marks over the package treatment plan, and we're told that can be addressed by conditioning. If it can't be addressed, it's not satisfactory. And I think when we're looking at something that can't be addressed, then it is unsatisfactory, and we should look at it very, very carefully. I also look at the fact that there are 12 conditions attached to this application, many of which seem unenforceable, and I therefore would say that this should be a disguised refusal, and I think it's bad practice in planning terms, I really do. And then we look at talking about duty to cooperate, and we're told it's an ongoing piece of work with Blackpool and Wyre. Therefore, we shouldn't be giving weight to it. Why should we be taking the need for Wyre and Blackpool? At the moment, this borough doesn't have a need. I also believe that the applicant himself has not really displayed a need. He's displayed a desire. And therefore, I can't see that there's been any need demonstrated. And so therefore, I think, you know, on the absence of that evidence of any special need, the balance of consideration should weigh against this application, not in favour of it. Therefore, I believe that that we should be refusing this today, and I know that Councillor Heather Speake would like to come in and make her comments, and I'll leave it to her to comment.
The Vice Chairman is going to speak.
Yeah, I think a lot of what Councillor Ode says, and particularly with regard to the Highway Authority, is bad. And they've had a lot of restructuring there, and I think what has taken place has led to inconsistencies. And I would agree entirely, the more one speaks to the Chief Executive of Lancashire County Council to tell them to get a sensible and proper highway response, because it's embarrassing to us all. But having been on that site and seeing the limited amount of traffic there which is added to the issue, then I really do feel that traffic itself, to demonstrate that that could be a major issue that would stand in its way, I don't think we could sustain it. We're here with those ambiguities that you've rightly drawn to our attention. And the same, I think, has happened with regard to most of the statutory undertakers. And it is a very unsightly site. It's going to be developed for something, and I'm sure that those same consultation responses, if they were received with regard to other approvable sorts of development, would not generate the feeling there is today. Because, yes, there is experience, as has been said, that sometimes rules and regulations do get flouted. But on balance of all these things, and in the knowledge that if we recommend approval of this, then that decision, because I think the MP has said it should go to a higher level, at least for their consideration. In other words, it will then go to the Secretary of State. Taking all those things into account, then I'm willing to second Councillor Armitt's recommendation of going along with the officer's recommendation.
Okay, we've got a mover and a seconder. Councillor Speake.
Thank you, Chairman. I would just like to say a few words, and I'm going to really try and not duplicate what people have said. It's very difficult, though. The need for a gypsy and traveller site in this location in the borough of Fylde has not been established. It is agreed that national planning policy requires cooperation between local authorities to determine a need and proof that there is a need for a gypsy and traveller site. In the officer's report, there's no evidence given to any consultation with our neighbouring authorities in respect of coming to a decision on this application. In the absence of evidence of supply and delivery to meet the sub-region's need, it is wrong to conclude that this is a pre-identified site for gypsies on Thames Street, Newton. Policy HL8, 1A and 1B state that a need has to be pre-identified by the council. That has not happened. And that the applicant can demonstrate a need for a site in the area. That too has not happened. The applicant has had the opportunity to present their case for a need for a travellers or gypsy site in Newton. The applicant has not presented any evidence of general need or a need on the basis of personal circumstances of the applicant's gypsy status, or is never given any evidence of his present place of residence. We know nothing about the nature of their employment, their work vehicles and how many, machinery, and how many people actually will be living on site. All we know is it's 4 families and 8 caravans. The proposal will dominate that area of Newton. It would be visually intrusive with and we have many concerns regarding the highway safety and the environment. In the officer's report, there are many quotes from paragraphs 21 and 22 of the planning policy for travellers' sites. It should be balanced with paragraph 20 of the planning policy for travellers' sites, which reminds the decision makers that planning law requires applications to be determined in accordance with the development plan. Not enough consideration has been given to the impact this proposal would have, especially on Thames Street, which is a bridleway link used by horse riders, numerous dog walkers, where children play on their bikes. It is a single track full of potholes, floods easily, it's unlit, no footpath, and it's very narrow in places. But it's also beautiful and quiet and enjoyed by many, many people, especially those who walk it and live round there. It is also used by the movement of livestock and of tractors, but more importantly, it is enjoyed by many people every day. We are concerned with regard to the nature of the applicant's work, the number of vehicles needed for these 4 families, 8 caravans. Parking will be, it must be, for the site is hardly big enough. And I'm concerned that there will be an overspill of parking on Thames Street, which would be totally unacceptable. There are many reasons why this application should not go ahead. I've not even spoken about the contamination and lighting. I mean, we don't want street lights on Thames Street. We like it how it is. I would like to move refusal of this planning application. I have a seconder and I have a list of reasons for refusal. Thank you.
Do you want to answer that before we move to the... Councillor Oates, you wanted to speak?
I merely wanted to second the proposal, and we do have a list of reasons.
Okay. Anyone else want to speak before and against, before we... Councillor Fiddler, before we look at the conditions? Councillor Gold? Right.
Thank you, Mr Chairman. I can appreciate, I'm sure, all the members around this table can appreciate the position that Councillor Speak is in, speaking for her residents, and any of us would do the same. Can I just remind members, when we did deal with Bambers Lane, the travellers' site at Bambers Lane, Gypsy travellers' site, the recommendation by the officers was for refusal. The officers refused, their recommendation refused the application. But the members who've been talking around this table in terms of need voted in approval. So there's an inconsistency in the way that the Bambers Lane application was dealt with and this one. And like Councillor Armitt, I've listened to the professional presentation from the Residents Association, all the areas of concern in terms of flooding, draining, road safety, design, land contamination, visual impact, impact on the listed building, and listen to the reply given by our professional officers. And I came to the same conclusion that the Vice Chairman and Councillor Armitt have come to, is that if we cannot be supported in an appeal scenario, then we know the consequences. Thank you, Mr Chairman.
Councillor Collins.
Thank you, Chairman. This boils down to a question of need. The Secretary of State obviously thinks there is a need. He said so in that appeal decision. But what did he base that statement on? A survey done in 2007. Are those the figures that he's using? And does he know something we don't know? If you look on the report on page 2, in the summary of the officer's recommendation, it states quite clearly there is an identified need for gypsy and traveller sites in the wider area. If you look on the same report on page 14, need for sites. The need for gypsy and traveller sites in Fylde has not yet been established. A sub-regional GTTA has been commissioned by Blackpool, Wyre and Fylde councils and this will be used to establish a local need for gypsy and traveller sites in the borough. The Local Plan Part 2 Site Allocations to 2030 document will allocate the location of specific sites in the borough if a local need is established. If you then turn to page 15 at the bottom, it says, in terms of the need for gypsy sites, when the sub-regional GTTA is completed, the Council will have an identified and definitive requirement for gypsies and traveller pitches. If the writer of the report doesn't know if we have a need, when we have a report, yes, we might know. We don't know what that requirement will be. And if there is a need, from what's been said already, it's not in the borough of Fylde. It's elsewhere. It's probably in Blackpool. Now, if there is a need in Blackpool, surely the first place for that need to be met is in Blackpool. Other areas are producing new local plans as we are. They are looking at where they can allocate gypsy and traveller sites. We do not know if Fylde will have to accommodate gypsies from Blackpool or Wyre. We do not know that. Councillor Fiedler just mentioned Preston. In Cottam there are plans for 4,000 houses. Surely in amongst all that lot, I'm sure the Central Preston Council can allocate a few gypsy sites. It just boils down to need. A need has not been established. The writer of the report has not been consistent. If there is a need, it's based on figures from 2007. It's not up to date. Until we have a report, until we know what a need is, we do not know, and nobody around this table can state what that need is. Thank you, Chairman.
Yeah, Chairman, just to clarify the point that was raised by Councillor Collins, the reference on page 14 is in the consultation response from the planning policy team. It's not the report writer's statement. Anything that's in italics in this report is the comment of a third party, rather than the final report of either the case officer or myself presenting to this committee. In terms of the GTAA was carried out in 2007, or published in 2007. It runs to 2016, so we're still within that period. The issue that we have in regards to the emerging local plan is that will have to run to 2030. Obviously, that's beyond 2016, and hence the need for a new assessment. I think the report labours the point. It's been laboured previously, so there's no point in me going over it again. But the manner in which the local need has been assessed has been quite clear, and we feel that it is consistent with the interpretation given to it by that assessment by the Secretary of State himself. At the end of the day, it's the Secretary of State that writes and publishes the guidance and has the ultimate say on decisions at appeals if he feels it's his fit to call those applications in. So, like I say, the need has been addressed quite extensively. Thank you, Chairman.
Councillor speaking, Councillor Odes, you've actually stated you want to speak again. Have you got anything to add to what you've stated so far? Because this is something extra to add to it, only.
It is, Chairman. It's in response to Councillor Fiedler, and it's very important and applicable to this planning application. He's made reference to the fact of this gypsy site at Westby, and I would like to ask if the officer could please put this information I have on the slide, and it's a comparison between the two sites. Everything about the gypsy site at Westby, there is nothing equal to in comparison to the site in Newton. So for Councillor Fiedler's benefit, if nobody else's, I would like this to go up on the slide where this planning committee can see the differences for themselves. And the reason why, when the Westby application came to committee, I felt confident enough to approve it. And right, thank you. Can we have this put up there, please?
And just to add to that, Chairman, we fulfilled the need. There was a need at that stage. There is no longer a need.
That's incorrect, Mr Chairman. The officer's recommendation...
Excuse me, please, Councillor Fiddler. I have addressed that situation with this inspector's report. Right.
Just to clarify, Chairman, the decision at Fairfield Road was made after the approval of the additional sites at Cropper Road, at Bambers Lane, sorry. So that assessment did take account of those additional 6 pitches.
Chairman, please can I have it read out by an officer, the Bambers Lane site, and then in comparison, the Thames Street site. There's not a lot of reading to do, but it's very important for this committee to understand the differences.
Mr Allen, do you mind doing that, please?
So the report is phrased in terms of the main issues: highways and road safety first, Bambers Lane, direct access from a main road to a well made up single track 360 metres to the site entrance, passing approx 4 setback residential properties, very few pedestrians likely. In terms of Thames Street, only access through the main village, passing 70 to 100 households, a primary school, busy local shop, all in close proximity. Many pedestrians using main access routes, many children in the area. Last 200 metres to the site entrance is down a narrow single track lane, not made up, and is a well-used public footpath and bridleway. Significant safety issues due to the risk of vehicle and pedestrian horse conflict. No passing places. The next issue is sewage. Bambers Lane. Sewerage treatment facility and drainage field to meet the Environment Agency set pollution prevention guidelines. Access to an adjoining watercourse. Thames Street. Proposed system will not comply with Planning Policy Guidance Note guidelines. No watercourse, which is always available for dilution. The main sewerage is not available on Grange Lane as confirmed in writing with the United Utilities. Site design. Bambers Lane mainly complies with the Department of Community and Local Government guidelines at 300 square metres per caravan. Thames Street does not meet DCLG guidelines at 150 square metres per caravan. Main supply, electricity at Bambers Lane by main supply. Thames Street not connected to the main supply. Connection to the supply economically infeasible. Significant large-scale generators would have to be running 24/7 to supply any viable sewerage package treatment plant. Residential amenities, Bambers Lane, not overlooked, minimal noise, no generators, remote from nearby residential homes and very few of them. Thames Street, significantly overlooked, surrounded by 16 residential properties in close proximity. Noise a serious concern from electricity generators. Environmental impact. Listed building, environmental impact, Bambers Lane, non-perceived. Thames Street,